Welcome to NEET Prep Co. So, in the last class, we did organism and population, and today we had to start. So, this was the part one. Please check out. Okay, today we'll be doing part two. So, we had to start from adaptations. Okay, adaptation, population, as well as interactions. We'll do all that today. So, first, let's revise. It will be a brief recap, okay, of 5 minutes what we did in the previous class. After that, we'll start with adaptation. So, in the previous class, first of all, we talked about the introductory part was there. Okay, what is ecosystem? What is ecology? Organism, then population, then different community and ecosystem and biomes. Then we talked about their significance. Then we talked about organism and its environment 13.1. Over there, we talked about how there are different biomes and the majority of biomes they are formed due to variable amount of sunlight which falls on the earth. It forms due to which it results in different seasons and climates, because of which different biomes are formed. So least sunlight areas are the Arctic Circle, the tundra regions. Most are the tropical rainforest deserts, which are very hot because they receive maximum amount of sunlight from the sun. So we learnt about that. Then uh, then we what else did we learn? Yeah, we learned that except for the abiotic factors, okay, there are also biotic factors which influence the habitat of an organism, such as pathogens, parasites, predators, competitors. Then we talked about what's a niche. We learned that in a niche, when each and every organism has uh, an invariably defined range of conditions it can tolerate, the diversity of resources which it can utilize, and a distinct functional role in the this distinct functional role in the ecological system. You need to remember this. So all these together make that organism's niche. Okay, you need to write this answer only in boards. Now, then we talked about the major abiotic factors: temperature, water, light, and soil. In temperature, we saw euthermal, xenothermal. We saw that how when we go higher and higher up with the increase in altitude, there's a decrease in temperature as well as pressure. Then we saw how some organisms they can tolerate, such as archaebacteria. It can survive in hot thermal springs in 100 Celsius, whereas like so many other organisms cannot. Like then uh, then we talked about like how so many organisms are there which can only grow in a particular climate or a particular season or at a particular temperature specifically. So uh, then we talked about euthermal, xenothermal. Now after that, water, we learned about euryhaline, stenohaline, the salinity, the pH. It's also dependent on the chemical composition, distribution of organisms. Then as well as plants. Then we came to light. We saw that how there are many small shrubs and herbs which grow in the shade of taller plants, because of which they receive minimal amount of sunlight. So so they are constantly overshowered, and then many plants are also dependent on light for their photoperiod requirements. That is the sunlight acts as cues for foraging and reproductive and migratory activities. For animals, for plants, it is a requirement for flowering and um, fertilization, like seasonally, uh, for plants as well as animals. It's breeding according to sunlight. For plants, In winter season it's extremely cold, so you'll see that flowering occurs at a particular time of the day. In summer and winter it's both, for both it's different. In winter it's usually, sometimes middle of the day also, like when the food is prepared and all, it depends. Then um, soil, yeah, soil, it the characteristics, that is how soil varies in nature and property, all of that is dependent on the weathering process, soil development throughout the years, um, the climate, everything. Then percolation, we learned about what's percolation, what's water holding capacity, then pH, mineral composition, topography, all these things, they determine where, like, vegetation is and where more distribution of different animals is on the basis of the type of soil and nature and properties of soil. Then an aquatic environment, similarly, sediment characteristic, yeah, determine the type of benthic animals which can thrive in that particular aquatic animals which can thrive in that particular region. Then we learned about response to abiotic factors. We discussed in detail about homeostasis. Then then we talked about regulators, conformers, migrators, suspenders. Regulators, we talked how internal environment can be regulated, how a constancy can be there, how no matter what kind of external environment, what's the temperature of the external environment, it doesn't matter, our own internal body temperature will remain the same. Okay. Then we talked about conformers, why they are not able to regulate their own body temperature and their own internal environment, because there are many organisms whose volume, unlike us, is lesser than the surface area, therefore they lose heat very fast. Because they lose heat so fast, yeah, that's why they cannot do thermoregulation. It's really energetically expensive for them, to continuously heat their body up in cold regions and cool down their body and when they are in hot environments. So therefore they are not able to regulate. They are known as conformers. Then we came to migrators and suspenders. Migration, we learned that it's a behavioral response, that is, during a stressful period, the organism goes from one region to another temporarily. uh, uh, it goes to a more suitable environment, okay, then a less suitable one. For example, Siberian cranes come to from Siberia, they migrate to the Colorado National Park in Bharatpur, Rajasthan, okay, um, because it's extremely cold in Siberia. Then suspenders, suspending, that is reaching a stage of inactiveness or suspended development or dormancy, you can say. So in plants, that is the spore formation when it takes place in plants and lower plants, fungi, bacteria, and all. Then in unfavorable or unsuitable conditions, the thick walled, the pores have thick walls, and they only germinate when, or they only grow and reproduce, into a new organism when they get suitable condition. Until then they can serve, nothing happens to them, okay. They can go like that in a state of dormancy. Then in animals we saw hibernation and estivation. Hibernation in winters, when bears, they go to the they hibernate, okay. They reach a level of inactiveness or dormancy, that is they sleep continuously throughout the winter season. Similarly, and their fats are get oxidized. Similarly, estivation is the opposite during summer season. So during winter season, due to extreme cold, few organisms hibernate, okay. Then estivation occurs in the summer season due to extreme heat and desiccation. Few organisms, they reach level of suspended development or dormancy. For example, snails, that is in the summer season, that is estivation. Then zooplankton, it reaches during unfavorable conditions, zooplankton, it reaches a stage of a suspended development, which is called as diapause. Okay, so today we will start from adaptation. So, come to page number 225. Hold a pencil in your hand as well as your NCERT textbook. I'll be doing NCERT line by line explanation. So, adaptations. While considering the various alternatives available to organisms for coping with extremes in their environment, we have seen that some are able to respond through certain physiological adjustment, while some do so behaviorally, migrating temporarily to a less stressful habitat. These responses are also actually their adaptations. So, we can say that adaptation is any attribute of the organism, morphological, physiological, behavioral, which enables the organism to survive and reproduce in its habitat. Many adaptations have evolved over long evolutionary time and are generally fixed. In the absence of an external source of water, the kangaroo rat in North American deserts is capable of meeting all its water requirements through its internal fat oxidation, in which water is a byproduct. It also has the ability to concentrate its urine so that minimal volume of water is used to remove excretory products. Many desert plants have a thick cuticle on their leaf surfaces and have their stomata arranged in deep pits that is sunken to minimize water loss through transpiration. They also have a special photosynthetic pathway, which is CAM pathway, which enables their stomata to remain closed during daytime. Okay, when we see different alternatives which are available to organism to cope up with extreme environment, some we saw that uh, some do this by through physiological, morphological, or behavioral. So, yeah, excuse me. Yes. So, uh, adapt. Yeah. So many. Physiologically, some organisms, they can maintain their own internal environment. They can perform homeostasis, whereas others behaviorally we saw migration. They go from one place to the other. So basically, adaptation, we can say these responses, okay, to escape stressful conditions and go to to escape stressful conditions and go to a suitable or favorable environment where the organism feels comfortable. It can survive as well as reproduce. So this is nothing but adaptation. So what is adaptation? Basically, adaptation is any attribute of the organism, whether it be morphological, physiological, or behavioral, which enables the organism to survive and reproduce in its habitat. That is known as adaptation. Any attribute of the organism, morphological, physiological, or behavioral, which enables the organism to survive and reproduce in its habitat, is called as adaptation. Now let's see an example which is written in NCERT as well as questions come here, is that the in the North American desert, okay, there's the kangaroo rat, which uh, which yeah, meets its water requirements by oxidizing internal body fat. Okay, it internal fat oxidation takes place and water is a byproduct. Okay, plus further to reduce water loss, it can concentrate its urine to minimal. so that ability to concentrate its urine, so that minimal volume of water is removed. Minimal volume of water removed. Okay, this is really important. So in North American desert we have the kangaroo rat. The kangaroo rat, which lives in really hot climate, really hot climate, okay, extremely hot climate, and is not able to complete its water requirements by normal means, because there's lack of water, okay, like and because of less water, it also needs to prevent water loss, okay, due to extreme heat, lack of water, okay. So it meets its water requirements through internal fat oxidation, in which water is a byproduct. So it oxidizes its own fat, and in order to meet its food and water requirements, then to further reduce water loss, it concentrates its urine so that minimal volume of water is removed from its body. Now let's read ahead. Many desert plants have thick cuticle on their leaf surfaces and have their stomata. Please underline this. This is really important. Um, in deep pits to minimize water loss through transpiration. They also have a special photosynthetic pathway, that is CAM pathway. Do you know what is the full form of CAM? Crustacean acid metabolism, I think. Yeah. So this enables their stomata to remain closed during the daytime. Some desert plants like Opuntia have no leaves. They are reduced to spines, and the photosynthetic function is taken over by flattened stems. So in desert plants, this was about desert animal, that is kangaroo rat. When we come to desert plants, okay, first of all, plants, I don't think this was given in NCERT in the first 2 3 pages, but plants, hydrophytes, I think we will study about this later on. Xerophytes and mesophytes. Hydrophytes, as the word suggests, hydro. So these are the plants which need excess water to survive. Xerophytes, very less water to survive. Mesophytes, medium amount of water. Okay, so this is basically distribution on the amount, distribution of plants on the amount of water required. Okay, so when I come to desert plants, they have a thick cuticle on their leaf surface, and their stomata are arranged in deep pits. Okay, that is, they have sunken stomata. Why do they have this is their adaptation? Why do they have sunken stomata? To reduce water loss by transpiration. Then secondly, um, they also have CAM pathway, crustacean acid metabolism pathway, which helps them to keep their stomata closed during the day. Closed during the day. Okay. Then so and then there are other plants. Okay, so this is the second adaptation. The last adaptation is plants like opuntia and cactus. They have spines instead of leaves. Okay, again, Photosynthesis over here occurs through their stems. Okay, again they have spines instead of leaves, so as to prevent water loss, transpiration. Okay, so we are done with desert and the adaptations of desert plants as well as desert animals. Desert animals, we saw kangaroo rat which oxidizes its internal fat to meet the water requirement in desert. Whereas in plants we saw sunken stomata to prevent water loss by transpiration, as well as camp pathway, wherein the stomata is closed during the day, again to prevent water loss, as well as spines, modified leaves or spines in opuntia and cactus. Again, they prevent water loss by transpiration, and the photosynthetic function in such plants occurs in their stems. Now, now let's come to page number 226. Mammals from colder climate generally have shorter ears and limbs to minimize heat loss. This is known as Allen's rule. Okay, so now we have here, I think as of now, I can only see Allen's rule. Okay, there's also Glogger's rule and another rule. So mammals from colder climate generally have shorter ears and limbs to minimize heat loss. This is known as Allen's rule. In the polar seas, aquatic mammals like seals have thick layer of blubber below their skin, which acts as an insulator and reduces the loss of body heat. Okay, so what is Allen's rule? What is Allen's rule? Allen says that mammals in colder climates, mammals in colder climates have shorter limbs and ears. Or actually you don't say limbs and ears, you say they have shorter or smaller extremities. Many a times, this generalized extremities they say. In NCERT it's written mammals in colder climates have shorter limbs and ears. Okay, to minimize heat loss. So what does this exactly mean? So when an organism has large, ears and um, bigger limbs and all that, I don't know why I'm drawing, don't mind it. So when it has bigger extremities, then the surface area is also more. And when surface area is more, you know that heat loss is also more. When surface area is more, we know that the heat loss is also more. Therefore, the mammals in colder climates, they have shorter limbs and ears, and because of which the surface area is less, and as the surface area is less, the heat loss is also minimal. In polar seas, aquatic mammals like seals have a thick layer of fat which is called as blubber below their skin, which acts as an insulator and reduces the loss of body heat. So we know that seals, walrus, polar bear, all these organisms, they have a thick layer of fat beneath their skin which is called as blubber, and this acts as an insulator and reduces the loss of body heat. Now, some organisms possess adaptations that are physiological, which allow them to respond quickly to a stressful situation. If you had ever been to any high altitude place, that is which is greater than 3,500 meter, for example Rohtang Pass near Manali and Leh Ladakh, you must have experienced what is called as the altitude sickness. Its symptoms include nausea, fatigue, and heart palpitations. This is because in the low atmospheric pressure of high altitudes, the body does not get enough oxygen. But acclimatized and stop experiencing altitude sickness. How did your body solve the problem? The body compensates low oxygen availability by increasing red blood cell production and decreasing the binding affinity of hemoglobin by increasing the breathing rate. Many tribes live in high altitude of Himalayas. Find out if they normally have higher blood cell count or total hemoglobin than people living in the plains. So now we first learned what is an adaptation, then we learned adaptation in desert animal as well as adaptation in desert plants. Then we learned how the Allen's rule and how mammals adapt in colder climates. Okay, after hot we saw colder climates. Now let's come to adaptations, which are some physiological adaptations. Okay, to physio logical adaptations which escape in order to quickly get out of, or escape stressful situations, you can say. Okay, the physiological adaptation. So here the example is given that when we know that as we go up, the pressure as well as the temperature, they reduce as we go higher and higher up. So they have given an example that at more than 3,500 meter, okay, this is the Rotang Pass or the Leh Ladakh, you can say. When you go higher than 3,500 meter, we usually experience altitude sickness. So altitude sickness, all of us must have experienced it once in a while. So at first, when we experience altitude sickness, we know that we experience fatigue, heart palpitations, nausea. This is because suddenly, from normal body atmosphere and temperature, the temperature has suddenly reduced, and as well as there is very low atmospheric pressure, and our body is not acquainted or acclimatized to such a condition. Therefore, we get altitude sickness and experience the following symptoms. But and also because along with pressure and temperature, the oxygen level also decreases as we go higher and higher up, because of course the atmospheric pressure is also decreasing, temperature is also decreasing, so oxygen level also decreases. Therefore, due to lack of oxygen also, we feel even worse at suddenly if we go to high altitudes. But slowly, gradually our body gets acclimatized. Oh, if we suddenly go to Leh Ladakh, maybe for the first few days will feel like that, but over months and years you will get acclimatized to that surrounding, to that area. So why does this happen? They are asking that how does our body get rid or solve the problem so fast? So when there's so what the body does at high altitudes is that when there is that is a physiological adaptation of our body. This is a physiological adaptation of our body at high altitudes. When the oxygen level is less, then our body increases production of hemoglobin or red blood cell. Hemoglobin or red blood cell. So why does our body do this? So basically, we know that our body has certain binding capacity. What is binding capacity? That is oxygen plus hemoglobin both combine to form oxyhemoglobin. But when we go to higher altitudes, pressure is less, temperature is less, the oxygen level is also less. So we don't have enough oxygen to bind with our red blood cell, and to give us to provide us with enough oxygen in order to survive. Okay, so therefore we experience discomfort and altitude sickness and all of it, because the binding capacity also reduces, and oxyhemoglobin cannot be formed as efficiently as it was forming when we were in the plane, when we were at normal atmospheric pressure and temperature. So in this case, what happens slowly and gradually, as our body notices this, it physiologically adapts. In order to physiologically adapt to that surrounding, our body increases the production of hemoglobin, that is the red blood cell count increases. So that the binding so that it will decrease the binding affinity of hemoglobin, and increase the breathing rate. So as the production also increases, our breathing rate also increases, and the binding, now again it is binding affinity, it becomes normal. Okay, the affinity for more and more oxygen decreases. Earlier, since oxygen was very less, there was binding affinity was there. Okay, but now that decreases. The NCRT language, they like to twist and turn, it's not straightforward. So basically binding capacity decreases, so the affinity for oxygen increases, but because oxygen is very less at high altitudes. But as our body gets acclimatized to such a surrounding, then it increases the production of hemoglobin or red blood cell count, because of which the affinity of oxygen decreases and the binding capacity again becomes stable. And therefore we can see that in therefore we can see that in places such as uh, very high altitude, such as Himalayas, Leh Ladakh, and all, the people who are living there, the tribes and all, they have a higher red blood cell or hemoglobin count than the people who live in the plains. Okay, in most animals, the metabolic reactions, in most animals, the metabolic reaction and hence all the physiological functions proceed optimally in a narrow temperature range. In humans, it is 37 degrees Celsius. But there are microbes such as archaebacteria which can flourish in hot spring and deep sea hydrothermal vents where temperature exceeds 100 degrees Celsius. How is this possible? Many fish thrive in Antarctic waters where the temperature is always below zero. And how do they manage to prevent their body fluids from freezing? A large variety of marine invertebrates and fish live at greater depths where the ocean pressure could be more than 100 times the normal atmospheric pressure which we experience. How do they live in such high pressure conditions? How do they have any special enzyme? So let's start with the first question. Okay, I'll answer all the questions one by one. Funny thing about NCERT textbook is that it has more unanswered questions than the theory content. Okay, so you need to answer it yourself and understand it yourself. So first thing, archaebacteria, we learned this in we will learn, I haven't done the chapter yet, but if you are in 12th, then of course you would have learned archaebacteria. They can survive in extremely high temperatures. Okay, extreme temperatures. Whether it be very cold glaciers or it be very hot thermal hot springs, more than 100 degrees Celsius, they can survive. Why? We saw that because it has a different cell wall. Its cell wall is made up of different kinds of enzymes which make it resistant to in high temperature, extreme temperature, which prevent the archaebacteria from dying or getting harmed at very high temperature. They enable the archaebacteria to survive in extreme temperatures. So these enzymes that make up the cell wall, it enables the archaebacteria to survive in extreme temperatures. Okay. Then secondly, this, I think this answer would be written, or no, it's not written. Goodness. Anyways, so this is the first question's answer is this. Okay, so the question which is written that where's the Where's the question? Yeah. In most animals, okay, for us, 37 degrees Celsius is the optimal thing, but there are many archaeobacteria which flourish in deep sea hydrothermal vents and hot springs. How is that possible? The answer is this: they have special enzymes which make up the cell wall, which enables them to survive in extreme temperatures. Okay. Now let's come to the second question. So this is also very interesting thing. So this is where we are, okay, and this is the bathypelagic zone where the pressure is 100 times the atmospheric pressure. Okay, seriously, 100 times the normal atmospheric pressure. Over here many fishes are there. How do they survive in extreme pressure, okay, at such depth? And let's say this is also like temperature is also very less, then how do they not freeze? These are two questions. So for the first question, how they do not freeze, they have glycerol in them, okay, which prevents them from freezing. So this is the first answer to the first question: how do they manage to prevent their body from freezing, wherein in the Antarctic water temperature is always below zero? So they have glycerol component in them which prevents them, which is also known as antifreeze component. Then secondly, for pressure, they have a swim bladder that actually does multiple. It helps them in respiration, it helps them in recepting and producing sound, okay, and it also helps them to survive in high pressure conditions. How does now these first two you can remember, you cannot remember, up to you. Third one is important: how does it help them survive in high pressure zone? So let's say this is a fish. Okay, let me clear the canvas. So this is a fish. My drawing is absolutely terrible. So this is the swim bladder inside it, okay. So as it goes down, the the so basically what happens in the, okay, for before we go into that, we need to understand what happens when the pressure is very high, okay. So um how do I say this? Okay, so when I say blood pressure is very high, okay, there's a blood pressure is very high because there's a blockage. What exactly happens if this is your body, this is your blood vessel, and here there is a blockage, okay. So earlier the blood was flowing like this, the blood was flowing straight forward, let's say, um this is going to sound so funny, 5 meter per 10 meter per second. Now now the blood is flowing, but there's a blockage, so it can only flow through, let's say, these two seep holes or something. So earlier it was 10 meter per second, it was flowing continuously, no one was blocking it. The moment in dams also, how do you build up that pressure when the speed with which it's coming is going to remain the same? But over here, it's not able to, all that material that needs to go together, the blockage it's going to prevent, it's only going to let a certain amount, or sometimes even nothing, like the pressure will increase over here, okay. Here the pressure will increase. That's why in dams also, suddenly they open, and then the pressure increases, and that increase in pressure, spins the turbine, and then we get electricity, because with that pressure the water flows. So So what happens is, when there's too much pressure, when we go down, when we go deeper and deeper into the earth, the pressure, it keeps increasing. So anything which has air in it, okay, it will get squashed. That's why we cannot go below a certain depth, in scuba diving also. That's why we need to wear those. Even to go to that depth, we need to wear that entire kit, which it weighs 2-3 kgs. It's heavy kit, so that we don't get compressed, we don't get squeezed. So what the swim bladder does is that it removes all the air, and the fish goes deeper and deeper where the pressure is high. There's nothing to squeeze the fish, okay, there's no air inside it. And as the fish wants to again go up, then the air enters and the fish starts floating, and it goes higher and higher and higher up, and it swims in the surface waters. Again, when it needs to go down, then the air, everything is from the swim bladder, it goes out and it comes down and again swims in the normal, in the high pressure region, in the bathypelagic zone. This is how it works. So the second question, how do they live under such high pressure? It's due to swim bladder that they have. Now, some organisms show behavioral responses to cope up with variations in their environment. Desert lizards lack the physiological ability that mammals have to deal with high temperatures of their habitat, but manage to keep their body temperature fairly constant by behavioral means. They bask in the sun and absorb heat when their body temperature drops below the comfort zone, but they move into shade when their ambient temperature starts increasing. Some species are capable of burrowing into soil to hide and escape the above ground heat. So we know that desert lizards are conformers. Okay, so we know that desert lizards, they are conformers. They cannot perform homeostasis. They cannot regulate their internal body temperature. They are not eurythermal. They are stenothermal. They do not have a very long range temperature tolerance. So because they lack the physiological ability to deal with high temperatures and keep their body temperature constant, they use behavioral means. How do they use behavioral means? So whenever it's too hot, okay, whenever it's too hot, they go into the shade and they keep their body cool. Whenever it's too cold, they come outside before to keep themselves um, in colder climate. First of all, they are lizard, but anyways, to keep themselves cool all the time, they come and they bask in the sun. They bask in the sun and they absorb the heat. Okay, and then when it's too hot, they go to the shade and they again cool themselves. So this is how the desert lizards survive, by behavioral means. Now, some species are capable of burrowing a hole to hide and escape. Now, other organisms, poor small rats and all, moles and all, they dig inside deep in the earth and they burrow. Okay, and they live there till the upper climate is suitable for them. Then they come out, they hunt, they eat food, and then again when they see that it's getting unfavorable, it's getting hotter or colder, then again they go inside their burrow and they live over there. Okay. So we finish adaptations with this. Please underline the important points. I think all this entire adaptation, starting to beginning, everything is important. Okay, and please note down that antifreeze component glycerol, as well as the enzymes. Okay, that is cell wall, that extreme temperature archaebacteria, as well as the swim bladder and in the bathypelagic zone. You may be asked such things, and you cannot say it is not there in NCERT. It is there in NCERT. NCERT just wrote the question; it did not give you the answer. So please remember, revise, understand, study. Now let's come to population. Already a lot time has gone. My videos are being extremely long. So population. Now, population attributes. What are the attributes of population? In nature, we rarely find isolated single individuals of any species. Majority of them live in groups in a well-defined geographical area, share or compete for similar resources, potentially interbreed, and thus constitute a population. What is population basically? Do you see that okay, there is only one member of this species, karke, except for if you take blue whale, except for blue whale and other extremely endangered and extinct species, like is there do you say that okay, there's only one human being or only one bird, one crow or one pigeon of this its entire kind? No, usually they have well defined geographical areas, they share the same resources, they live in groups, and they interbreed, and therefore they make a population. Now, although the term interbreeding implies sexual reproduction, a group of individuals can result even from an asexual reproduction. It's not interbreeding doesn't always mean sexual reproduction. We think it implies, but to have a population, it's not necessary. You always need to sexually interbreed. When it comes to hydra and other organisms, if I need an entire population of hydra, then I can get it through asexual reproduction, right? If I need many plants through vegetative propagation, I can take the potato tubers and grow so many different potato plant, all not different, same but many potato plants from it. Even is also generally considered a population for the purpose of ecological studies. All the cormorants in a wetland, rats in an abandoned dwelling, teakwood trees in a forest tract, bacteria in a culture plate, and lotus plants in the pond are some examples of population. Any organism which is present in a group competes for the same natural resources from the same species, and you know together has the same resources, geographical area, and everything. We call it as population. Anything, human population, rat population, monkey population, whatever your favorite animal or plant that's populate that entire species together, it's population. In earlier chapters, you have learned that although an individual organism is the one that has to cope with change with a changed environment, it is at the population level that natural selection operates to evolve the desired traits. Population ecology is therefore an important area because it links ecology to population genetics and evolution. Population ecology is therefore because okay, so at population level only the selection operates and you evolve the desired trait. So basically it is very important from an ecological point of view because it links ecology as well as evolution and popular genetics and evolution. Okay, so it is really important. Population ecology is very important. Through it we can also we can relate it to a population genetics as well as evolution. A population has certain attributes whereas an individual organism does not. Individual may have births and deaths, but population has birth rates and death rates. See, this is the thing. When I say there's one individual organism, I'll say when was he born, when did he die. But when I say so many, I cannot say when were they born, give me a date, and when did they die. Everyone, it will be different, right? And let's say for four people still I can give you, but together when I tell you to give me one good answer, one approximate or an average answer, and I have, let's say, plus 50 people, okay, so these are five, so total 55 people I have, then over there I'll say birth rate and death rate, because all of them are not born together, die together, not even in the same year. Now someone may be extremely old, someone may be extremely young, someone was just born, someone just died. So their birth rates and death rates are there. In a population, these rates refer to per capita birth and per capita death. You can also call this as per capita birth and per capita death. Plus, birth rate can also be called as the natality rate. Okay, natality rate. Death rate can also be called as the mortality rate. Now, the rates here expressed are change in numbers, increase or decrease with respect to members of the population. So basically, when I say give me the formula of birth rate and death rate, you need to write the number of births, okay, in that particular year to total number of population, that is total number of individuals. Similarly, number of deaths to total number of individuals. So here's an example. If in a pond there were 20 lotus plants last year, okay, and through reproduction 8 new plants were added, taking the current population to 28, then we calculate the birth rate. So initially population was 20, 8 were added, so 8 by 20, that is equal to 0.4 is your birth rate. Okay, then for death rate also another example. If 4 individuals in a laboratory of population of 40 fruit flies died, so 4 died, there were total 40. Okay, so 4 out of 40, 1 by 10, that is 0.1 individuals, that is the death rate. Okay, per fruit fly per week. Then again another attribute. In attributes, we till now we saw 2 attributes. First attribute was birth rate. Second attribute was death rate. Now let's see the third attribute. Third attribute is sex ratio. What is the sex ratio? Another attribute characteristic of a population is sex ratio. An individual is either a male or a female, but a population has a sex ratio. Example, 60% of the population are females and 40% are males. Okay, so sex ratio is basically the ratio of males to females in a population. So for us, it's written that let's say 40% of the population are males, 60% are females. Population at any given time is composed of individuals of different ages. If the age distribution percent individuals of a given age or age group is plotted for the population, the resulting structure is called as the age pyramid. So the fourth attribute would be the age distribution. Okay, what is age distribution? Age distribution is that when we distribute the population according to the different age groups. A population at any given time is composed of individuals of different age. If age distribution is nothing but percent individuals of a given age or age group, percent individuals of particular age or age group is known as age distribution. Now, uh, for the resulting structure is called as the age pyramid. When we geometrically, graphically, whatever you can say, we plot it, then the resulting structure, on plotting the resulting structure, is called as age pyramid. For human population, the age pyramid generally show age distribution of males and females in a diagram. The shape of the pyramid reflects the growth status, whether it's growing, whether it's stable, or whether it's declining. The size of the population tells us a lot about its status in the habitat. Whatever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition with another species, the impact of a predator, or the effect of pesticide application, we always evaluate them in terms of change in the population size. The size in nature could be as low as less than 10, that is Siberian cranes at Bharatpur wetland in any year, or could go into millions, that is Chlamydomonas in a pond. Population size technically is called as population density. So population size can technically be called as population density. Okay, so first let's see the age pyramids, then we will come to population density. Okay, so we got to know that age distribution is nothing but when you distribute people of different age groups. Okay, uh, yeah, uh, then we get here, which is basically the age pyramid. Now expanding, stable, declining. So there are 3 age pyramids, okay, and there are we can divide them into 3 age groups also. So one is the pre-reproductive age, one is the reproductive age, and one is the senescence age. Okay, so now let's come to the first pyramid. Sorry, my drawing is terrible with stylus. Even without stylus it's not that good, but okay. 1 2 1 2. This wasn't needed anyways. Huh. So this is the pre-reproductive age. It's higher, we know. Okay, so the people that the people that are getting born, they are higher. People who are the birth is more. Okay, now the death is less, and this is the working population. Okay, so the birth, if the birth is more and the death is less, that means the number of individuals are increasing per year. So this is a growing population, or you can also say expanding population. Okay, it's growing. So for example, India, the number of births per year, the number of deaths per year, the number of births are more than the number of deaths. Okay, even with COVID and all, still we are increasing only. So uh, so basically this is a growing or expanding population. Now let's come to second one, that is stable. So what's stable? Okay, so there I drew it as a triangle. You don't actually need to draw it as a triangle. Like, you can just draw it like this. It's going to look triangular. So the growing population, it's going to look like this. I just put a pointy over here, which is not needed. So this is pre-reproductive is the highest, then reproductive, and then death is the lowest. So this is growing. Now let's come to stable population. When I say stable population, if this is the pre-reproductive, then the this is a pre-reproductive. You can see that this is pre-reproductive, this is reproductive. It's almost same. Okay, so this is stable. This is known as a stable population. How it is stable population? Because the number of individuals who are dying, okay, who are dying is equal to the number of individuals who are born. Okay, so like the population is neither increasing nor decreasing. The reproductive and pre-reproductive is almost the same, and the death is only a bit less than these two. So basically, like, if you take the net, it's not increasing that much. It's neither increasing nor decreasing. So it's stable population. The last one, we come to declining population. Declining population, you can see of what can you say? Declining population. Japan, the old age people are more. So this would be the declining population. You know, something like that would be the declining population. So here the people who are so the birth rate is very less. Okay, sorry, the birth rate is very less. So the people who are born per year is very less as compared to the people who are there in the old age period. Okay, so the people who are born, that is the pre-reproductive age, people in the pre-reproductive age group are very less than the people in the post-reproductive age group, or senescence, you can say. So this is a declining population. These populations, you can also say that the growing population is triangular in shape. The stable population is actually bell jar shaped, and this one is on shaped, declining population. It's there in NEET. Now let's come to population size and population density. Okay, so the size of population that tells us a lot about the its status in the habitat. Whatever ecological processes we wish to investigate in a population, be it the outcome of competition or predator or pesticide, whatever it is, through the population size, we can say the change which has happened, how many people have died, how many people are there, how it has affected everything. So the size in nature could be as low as no less than 10 in Siberian cranes, whereas millions, that is chlamydomonas in a pond. Population size is technically known as population density. You need to underline this. So population size technically can be called as population density, which is designated as N. Need not necessarily be measured in numbers only, although total number is generally the most appropriate measure of population density. It is in some cases either meaningless or difficult to determine. In an area, there are 200 carrot grass, that is Parthenium hysterophorus, plants, but only single huge banyan tree with a large canopy, stating that population density of banyan is low relative to the carrot grass. Amounts to underestimating the enormous role of banyan in that community. In such cases, the percent cover or biomass is a more meaningful measure of the population size. So, biomass is the percent cover of such a species or such an organism. So the percent cover or biomass is more meaningful measure of the population size. The total number is again not an easily adoptable measure. If the population is huge and counting is impossible or very time consuming, if you have a dense laboratory culture of bacteria in a petri dish, sometimes for certain ecological investigation there is no need to know absolute population densities. Relative densities serve the purpose equally well. Okay, so where were we? I had just paused and to take a sip of water. So so sometimes for certain ecological investigation there is no need to know absolute population densities. You don't need to know absolute population densities all the time. Okay, relative densities serve the purpose equally well. For instance, the number of fish caught per trap is good enough measure of its total population density in the lake. We are mostly obliged to estimate population sizes indirectly without actually counting them or seeing them. The tiger census in our national parks and tiger reserves is often based on pug marks and fecal pellets. Okay, this is please underline this. You may ask, the tiger census in our national parks and tiger reserves is often based on pug marks, okay, and fecal pellets. So we determine how many tigers are there according to the pug marks that they leave, the footprints of the tiger, as well as the fecal pellets. Okay, fecal pellets, fecal matter, you can understand. Yeah. Now, population growth. The size of a population for any species is not a static parameter. It keeps changing with time depending on various factors, including food availability, predation pressure, and adverse weather. So, the size of population for any species is not a constant. Okay, it is not a static parameter. It keeps changing with time. It depends on various factors, including the food availability, predation pressure, and adverse weather. In fact, it is these changes in population density which give us some idea of what is happening to the population, whether it is flourishing or declining. So these different parameters, because it's not stable, it's not constant, these different parameters, these changes which continuously keep affecting a particular species of population, this gives us an idea as to what is exactly happening to the population density, whether it's flourishing or declining. Whatever might be the ultimate reason, density of population in a given habitat during a given period fluctuates due to changes in four basic processes. Okay, so um, two of which contribute to increase, two of which contribute to decrease. So natality or birth rate, as I can say, that is number of births, as well as immigration. When people come, I, people usually get confused. Emmy, immigration, coming inside, emigration, going. So immigration and natality or birth rate both increase the population. Okay, this causes increase in population. Emigration and death rate both decrease the population. So natality refers to the number of births during a given period in the population which are added to the initial density. Mortality is the number of deaths in the population during a given period. Immigration is the number of individuals of the same species that have come into the habitat from elsewhere during the time period under consideration. And emigration is the number of individuals of the population who left the habitat and gone elsewhere during the time period under consideration. So natality is basically nothing but the birth rate, which it refers to the number of births which occur in a given period in a population, and they are added to the initial density of the population. Mortality is the number of deaths which occur in a population and during a given period. Immigration, whenever we go out of country to travel somewhere, while going we say okay, we need to stop in the immigration, it will take time, please let's go fast. While coming back from that country again to our own country, we say emigration. Okay, we don't, both are not, because over here we are, when we reach over there, yeah, immigration happens. Over here emigration happens, sorry, so sorry. So immigration is when you go to some place while their population density is taken into consideration. Okay, a number of individuals of same species which come to the habitat elsewhere during the time period under consideration. During the time period under consideration, when you immigrate to that place, same species, then we call it as immigration. When you leave that place, we call it as emigration. Okay, so immigration and natality both increase, emigration and mortality both decrease population. These both increase population. Now, if n is the population density, so this is a very important formula. Okay, it's already 1 hour. Fine, we need to finish this chapter. Already, like, this is the second video, so let's see. If n is a population density at time t, then its density at time t plus 1, what is it? Okay, so we need to find at t plus 1. So t plus 1 can be the next year. Okay, so this year population density we know at this time t. So birth rate plus immigration minus death rate plus emigration. Okay, this together gives us the population density at that time. Sorry, t plus excuse me, so sorry, that is t plus 1. So you can see from the above equation that population density will increase if the number of births plus the number of immigrants, that is birth rate plus immigration, is more than the number of deaths, that is death rate plus emigration. So so this is very self-explanatory. When will the population increase? Then when will the population grow? When will the population increase? When this is greater, this is higher. Okay, because at the end of the day we are going to add it with the initial population density. So if this is greater then then this, then of course population will increase. If this is greater than this, then the population will decrease. For example, if the population density is 20, okay, no, let's take a higher number. Let's say population density is 50, initial population density. We need to find the current population density. The birth rate and the immigration which have happened is two people were born in the last 6 months, and yeah, five people migrated. Okay, now death rate, there were five deaths plus two people, sorry, four people migrated. Okay, so 50 plus here 7 minus 9. So 50 minus 2, 48. Okay, so 7 minus 9 minus 2, 50 minus 2, 50 is greater, so of course it will always be positive. Okay, it cannot be negative. So 48 is the new population. So this is declining. Okay, if birth rate, if this is higher, population will increase. If this is higher, then the population will decrease. Now, under normal conditions, births and deaths are the most important factors influencing population density. The other two factors assuming importance only under special conditions. For instance, if a new habitat is just being colonized, immigration may contribute more significantly to population than the population growth than the birth rate. So usually when we're talking about a country, okay, such as India, then birth and death is more important than kitne log aaye kitne log gaye. Okay, so it doesn't really matter at that point, because as compared to immigration, birth and death is more significant, higher and more important. But let's say something happened, and um, let's say um, after World War II, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, like, or any other place which was destroyed, or something happened, and now that place is completely vacant, and we need to repopulate it. When we need to repopulate it, and there are only five people over there, uh, they cannot give birth so fast now to so many people. When so as many people as they are giving birth or they are producing, more than that people are repopulating. Okay, so here in such rare conditions, immigration and emigration, it becomes more important than for the population growth than birth and death rate. Okay, in such conditions. Now let's come to growth models. Does growth of a population with time show any specific or predictable pattern? We have been concerned about unbridled human population growth and problems created by it in our own country, and it is therefore natural for us to be curious if different animal populations in nature behave the same way or show some restraints on growth. Perhaps we can learn a lesson or two from nature on how to control population growth. Okay, so first we come to exponential growth. So now we are studying growth models. Okay, first is exponential growth. Resource, food and space availability is obviously essential for the unimpeded growth of a population. Ideally, when resources in the habitat are unlimited, each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential to grow in number. As Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection, then the population grows in an exponential or geometric fashion. If the population of size n, birth rate, that is total number per capita birth, not total number per capita births, are represented as b, and death rate again then increase or decrease during a time period t is dn by dt, will be dn by dt, that is B minus D into N population density, that is B minus D is equal to R, that is the rate of intrinsic rate of natural increase, then dN by dt is equal to Rn. Okay, please circle it or highlight it. Okay, so exponential growth. First one is exponential growth. Resource, food and space availability is obviously essential for the unimpeded growth of a population. Okay, food and space, that is resource, is necessary, essential for growth of population. Ideally, when resources in the habitat are unlimited, each species has the ability to realize fully its innate potential. When resources are unlimited, each and every species has the ability to realize its full potential and grow in number, as Darwin observed while developing his theory of natural selection. So, um, under unlimited resources, each and every species will grow, and there will be exponential growth, there will be no problem. Then the population grows in an exponential or geometric fashion. If in a population of size n, the birth rate, that is per capita birth are represented as B and death rate are as D, then the increase or decrease in n during a time unit of time period t is dn by dt. Okay, so dn by dt is equal to B minus D into n, then the birth rate minus death rate is equal to R, that is intrinsic rate of natural increase. Then dn by dt is equal to Rn. Okay, now the Rn is intrinsic rate of natural increase and is very important parameter choosing for assessing impacts of any abiotic or biotic factor on population growth. To give you some idea about magnitude of R values, for the Norway rat, the rate of natural increase is 0.015. For the flower beetle, it is 0.12. In 1981, the R value for human population was 0.0205. Find out what the current value for, you need to know birth rate and death rates. All right. You can do this as a homework. The above question, not that I'm giving, I'm just telling you. The above equation describes the exponential growth or geometric growth pattern of a population and results in a J-shaped curve. When we plot n in relation to time, if you are familiar with basic calculus, you can derive the integral form of exponential growth equation as nt is equal to n naught ert, where nt is the population density after time t, population density at time 0 is n0, r is intrinsic rate of natural increase, and e is the base of natural logarithm, that is 2.7182 8. So rate of natural intrinsic rate of natural increase, that is at the end of the day, how many births, how many deaths, how many immigration and emigration is happening. Japan is like an exception, but usually, and other endangered and extinct species are there, but usually, like, naturally, how much population is increasing. Okay, so examples are given. You can remember Norway rat 0.015, flower beetle 0.102, human population 1981 was 0.0205. Now, now the graph exponential curve. Okay, it is J-shaped curve. Okay, so this is K, that is the carrying capacity. This is population density N. This is K. Okay, this is entire this population density N. Then yeah, this is time T, and this is the exponential curve which is just going on increasing. dn by dt is equal to Rn. Okay, now any species growing exponentially under limited resource conditions can reach enormous population densities in a short time. Darwin showed how even a slow growing animal like elephant could reach enormous numbers in the absence of checks. The following is an anecdote popularly narrated to demonstrate dramatically how fast a huge population could build up when growing exponentially. Okay, so this is J-shaped exponential curve or geometric growth, also growth curve, also you can say. So a so this is when there are unlimited resources. When there are unlimited resources, it keeps on growing. Exponential growth occurs. Keeps on growing, because like there's no till now, according to this unlimited resources. So the growth is not limited, plot is exponential. Now this is the carrying capacity. Another one is when there's limited resources. This is the B part, the limited resources. We will come to that slowly. K is the carrying capacity. What is the carrying capacity? Carrying capacity is nothing but like with the amount of resources available, amount of resources that you have, and geographical area and everything, taking everything into consideration, especially limited resources, the highest to the number of individuals which can utilize the total number of resources, that is the highest number of individuals it can increase according to the amount of resource available, that is known as carrying capacity basically. Okay. The king and the minister sat for a chess game. King, confident of winning the game, was ready to accept any bet proposed by the minister. Minister humbly said that if he won, he wanted only what some grains, the quantity, only some wheat grains, quantity of which to be calculated by placing on the chessboard one grain in square 1, then 2 in square 2, then 4 in square 3, and 8 in square 4, doubling each time the previous quantity of wheat to the next square until all 64 squares were filled. The king accepted the seemingly silly bet and started the game. But unluckily for him, the minister won. The king felt that fulfilling the minister's bet was so easy. He started with a single grain on the first square and proceeded to fill the other squares, following minister's suggested procedure. But by the time he covered half the chessboard, the king realized to his dismay that all the wheat produced in the entire kingdom pooled together would still be inadequate to cover all the 64 squares. Now think of a tiny paramecium starting with just one individual and through binary fission doubling in numbers every day, and imagine what kind of a boggling population size it would reach in 64 days provided food and space remain unlimited. All right. So okay, so this was a good example by NCRT. So basically, king and minister were playing chess. The minister said that if I win, then if let's say there are 64 squares now in chess, so it's again self-explanatory. So if here I put one grain, then here there will be two, then four, then eight, and similarly it will go on, and there are total 64 squares. Okay, and at first the king didn't understand. He was like, this is such a silly bet, but later on, as it kept going, it was exponential, right? Like exponentially it was increasing. So then he realized that even if he gets the grains of the entire kingdom, still he won't be able to finish it. Okay. So basically to that they have related that if we take paramecium, and through binary fission it keeps on dividing so much, then in 64 days, where it will reach if there are no restrictions, if it has unlimited space and unlimited resources, and like how much will be the population size, it will increase exponentially. So for that, next we come to logistic growth. Okay, the B one that I was saying, logistic growth. No population of any species in nature has at its disposal unlimited exponential growth. Like if we speak sensibly, then no population of any species actually has disposable unlimited resources to permit exponential growth. This leads to competition between individuals for limited resources. Eventually the fittest individual will survive and reproduce. The governments of many countries have also realized this fact and introduced various restraints with a view to limit human population growth. In nature, a given habitat has enough resources to support a maximum possible number, beyond which no further growth is possible. This limit is known as carrying capacity for that species in that habitat. So like unlimited cannot, any species it has its disposal, cannot have unlimited resources to permit exponential growth, which is why we have one child norm, hum do hamare do, all those things. India is India. China to has also like so many. They had, I think, only child also a norm and all of that thing. So like we need to limit our population at the end of the day, because if we keep growing exponentially, then the resources on available on our earth, they won't be proportional to the number of human beings are there. Like we will be more in number and the resources will be less. So at the end of the day, it will lead to scarcity of resources, more competition and fighting for resources. So basically, carrying capacity, as I said earlier, is nothing but um, enough resources support in a given habitat has enough resources to support maximum possible number, beyond which no further growth is available, and that limit at which, after which no further growth is possible, that limit wherein the number of resources that we have, that many people, number of maximum amount of resources, that is the resources can limit, can accommodate maximum amount of people, can survive with that much resources, that is known as limit, is known as carrying capacity, which is denoted by a K. A population growing in a habitat with limited resources show initially a lag phase, following by phases of acceleration and deacceleration, and finally an asymptote when the population density reaches the carrying capacity. A plot of n relation to time t results in sigmoid curve. This type of population growth is known as the Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth. So earlier we had that J-shaped curve. Now this is a sigmoid curve, and it is also known as the Verhulst-Pearl logistic growth. It is described by dn by dt is equal to Rn k minus n by k. Okay, so this is n population density. This is t time. Okay, this is k carrying capacity. This is your a exponential growth curve, and it is denoted by dn upon dt is equal to Rn. This is your logistic growth curve. What is the formula for logistic growth curve? It is dn by dt is equal to Rn, carrying capacity minus population density upon carrying capacity, k minus n by k. This is important. Okay, so first in logistic growth there is a period of so first, initially it's a lag phase. Okay, this is the lag phase. Not much is happening. Then here is the accelerated phase. Okay, population is increasing. This is the deacceleration phase. That is population after a certain period of time it decreases, and then basically it becomes asymptote. That is, it reaches the carrying capacity. Maximum population for available resources is reached, and the limit has been reached. Okay, this is really important. Please underline this. Lag phase, acceleration, deacceleration, finally asymptote. Since resources for growth for most animal population are finite and becoming limiting sooner or later, the logistic growth model is considered a more realistic one. So because the resources, okay, are becoming finite and they are going to end sooner or later, okay, so that's why logistic makes more sense. When earth, billions of years ago, when we had ample of resources, where the population was still growing, which was very little as compared to the resources. Nowadays pollution is there, global warming is there, the yeah, the ice caps, they are melting, there's so many problems are there. We are oil, petroleum, it's getting extinct slowly, and uh, and so and so the the logistic growth makes more sense, because currently there's no way we can have unlimited resources. Now let's come to life history variation. Populations evolve to maximize their reproductive fitness, also called Darwinian fitness. Okay, so populations, they evolve to maximize their reproductive fitness. Maximize reproductive fitness. What is this also called? This is also known as Darwin's fitness. High R value in the habitat in which they live. Under a particular set of selection pressures, organisms evolve towards the most efficient reproductive strategy. Some organisms breed only once in their lifetime, such as the Pacific salmonfish bamboo, whereas the others breed many times during their lifetime, that is, most birds and mammals. Some produce a large number of small sized offspring, oysters, pelagic fishes, while others produce large numbers, such as birds and mammals. Now, what is desirable for maximizing fitness? Ecologists suggest that life history traits of organisms have evolved in relation to the constraints imposed by abiotic and biotic components of the habitat in which they live. Evolution of life history traits in different species is currently an important area of research, and it is being conducted by ecologists. There is nothing much to read, understand, or explain here. It's life history variation is nothing but we know that we evolve to maximize our reproductive fitness. Okay, so that's what is written, that some organisms breed only once, such as bamboo and salmon fish. Others breed many times, uh, and most mammals. And then there are small sized large number of small sized offspring, such as oysters, bathypelagic, whereas we produce a small number of large sized offspring. So similarly, like life history variation. Okay, now let's come to the last part of the chapter, that is population interactions. It is really long, and it's already 1 hour 30 minutes, so this is going to be a 2 hour video. Okay, all right. Population interactions. Population interactions. This is purely based on examples. Need to understand, remember the examples, and you need to write these only in your CBSE board exam. Can you think of any natural habitat on earth that is inhabited just by a single species? There is no such habitat, and such a situation is even inconceivable. There is no such natural habitat which is only single species is inhabited. For any species, minimal requirement is more than one species on which it can feed. Even a plant species which makes its own food cannot survive alone. It needs soil microbes to break down organic matter in soil and return the inorganic nutrients for absorption. And then how will the plant manage pollination without an animal agent? It is obvious that in nature, animals, plants, microbes do not and cannot live in isolation. They need to interact in various ways to form biological community. Even in minimal communities, many interactive linkages exist, although all may not be readily apparent. Interspecific interactions arise from the interaction of population of different species. Okay, so interspecific interactions arise from interaction of population of different species. They could be beneficial, detrimental, or neutral. That is, they would neither harm nor benefit to one species or both, assigning positive sign for beneficial interaction, negative for detrimental, and zero for neutral interaction. So we know that any species cannot survive in isolation. We need another species to either feed or help or whatever it is. Like in some way or the other, population interaction needs to be there. So all the organisms, plants, animals, microbes, bacteria, all of them, they need each other. Survival, they are in some way interdependent on each other. Okay, population interactions are necessary for survival. They cannot happen alone in isolation. So here they, and these population interactions, they can be either beneficial or detrimental or neutral. So now let's see. So for beneficial we have positive, detrimental we have negative, and neutral we have zero. So first let's come to commensalism. Wait, let me write all of it. mutualism, competition, commensalism, mutualism, competition, predation, parasitism, then amensalism. One more is left, or all are done? Yeah, all are done. Okay. So mutualism, symbiotic relationship, both are mutual. There is positive, positive. Both organisms benefit each other. Competition, both compete with each other. Negative, negative. Both of them are competing with each other. Predation, one organism is benefited. The predator, it eats. उसको अच्छा खासा खाना वाना मिल गया. The other one, uh, it loses its life or whatever, gets harmed or whatever. So positive, negative. Parasitism, again, the host is harmed, okay, whereas the parasite, it is benefited, it uses up its all its nutrients and thrives and survives, okay. Now commensalism, one is affected positively, other one is is not affected at all, it is neutral, okay. So I'll give examples. Then amensalism, negatively, one organism is affected, the other one isn't affected at all, so zero, okay. You need to remember these signs. Along with the signs, remember this, it's easier to understand the moment you remember this, okay. So both species benefit in mutualism, both species lose in competition. Parasitism, predation, only one species benefits, other one other one doesn't, okay, it's detrimental. In commensalism, one is benefited, other is not harmed at all, neutral. Amensalism, one is harmed whereas the other one is not affected at all. So predation, parasitism, and commensalism, they share a common characteristic. The interacting species live closely together. So this is a very important point in NCERT. Please underline this. Predation, parasitism, and commensalism, all three of them share a common characteristic. They can ask you what common characteristic predation, parasitism, and commensalism share. They all, the interacting species, live closely together. Okay. Now let's come to predation. First one is predation. What would happen to all the energy fixed by autotrophic organism if the community has no animals to eat the plants? You can think of predation as nature's way of transferring to higher trophic level the energy fixed by plants. When we think of predator and prey, most probably it is the tiger and the deer which readily come into our mind, but sparrow eating seed is no less a predator. Although animals eating plants are categorized separately as herbivores, they are, in a broad ecological context, not very different from predators. Besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic level, predation plays other important roles too. It keeps the prey population under control. But for predators, prey species could achieve a very high population density and cause ecosystem instability. When certain exotic species are introduced into a geographical area, they become invasive and start spreading fast because the invaded land does not have its natural predators. The prickly pear cactus, introduced in Australia in the early 1920s, caused havoc by spreading rapidly into millions of hectares of rangeland. Finally, the invasive cactus was brought under control only after a cactus feeding predator, a moth from its natural habitat, was introduced into the country. Biological control methods adopted in agricultural pest control are based on the ability of the predator to regulate prey population. Predators also help in maintaining species diversity in a community by reducing the intensity of competition among competing prey species. In the rocky intertidal communities of the American Pacific coast, the starfish Pisaster is an important predator. In a field experiment, when all the starfish were removed from an enclosed intertidal area, more than 10 species of invertebrates became extinct within a year because of interspecific competition. All right. So, besides acting as conduits for energy transfer across trophic levels, predators play other important. Okay, so um, first one, predation. All right. What would okay? So predation is basically when one organism feeds on the other organism. Okay, so that organism is obviously benefited. The other organism is obviously harmed. So the organism which is feeding is predator, other one is the prey. So, in a way, broad classification, if we do, then all herbivorous organisms, also all of them, like somewhere or the other, whether you feed on plants or seeds or whatever, somewhere it is a form of predation only. It's not necessary that a bear killing or eating another animal, crow, and lion, tiger eating foxes and jackals and all. That is the only deer and all. That's the only type of predation. No. So we need to remember in predation few points. First point is that they act as conduits of energy across trophic levels. So we have learned this in food chain trophic levels, that like the plant eaten by deer, eaten by lion, like so similarly, like it's energy transfer takes place. We used to say 10 something, 10 joules or something. I don't remember so very well. I need to study 11th again. So, um, that is the first part. Then the second part, it keeps the prey under control. So here you can give an example. If the prey goes extinct, okay, if the prey goes extinct, then the predators they will be more, they will starve. They don't have prey to eat. If the predators go extinct if the predators go extinct then the prey population will increase in number, right? Zooplankton, if we don't have whale, sharks and all to eat zooplankton, then what will happen? The prey population, zooplankton, will increase exponentially, and then it will, at the end of the day, it will cause the ecosystems, it will create instability. It is unstable. So it keeps predators, keep the prey species under control. Otherwise, they will achieve very high population density and cause ecosystem instability. Then, when certain exotic species are there, they also start spreading, start invasing, and and they become invasive and start spreading very fast because they do not have natural predators. If in a place there are a lot of deers and lions are eating them, I take all the deers to a place where lions are not there at all, only goats and cows are there. Then the deers will become invasive, of course, because they don't have like they are not getting eaten by anything. Then, like, the predator is not there. And then next point is that there's an example, the prickly uh, pear cactus. Prickly pear cactus introduced in 1920s. It became so invasive. They had to get another predator, which is a moth, which feeds on it to control the population. So biological control methods adopted in agricultural pest control, they are also based on predator and prey only. So they keep each other in control. In rocky tidal communities of American Pacific coast, starfish disaster was important predator. When all the starfish were removed, 10 species of invertebrates became extinct because of interspecific competition. So over here, one thing, when we remove the predator, one thing is that they increase in number, they cause ecosystem stability. Another thing also is that when two three of preys, okay, two three species, they all increase together, then there will be interspecific competition, right? They will compete among each other. Earlier it was not possible because they were kept under control by the predator. Now that will happen, and they will become, at the end of the day, they will become extinct. So if a predator is too efficient and overexploits its prey, then also it is a problem, because then the predator will also become extinct because of lack of food. I just said that it will starve. So this is the reason why predators are as nature by prudent. Okay, prey species have evolved various defenses to lessen the impact of predation. Some species of insects and frogs, they are cryptically colored, that is camouflage occurs, so that they can avoid being detected easily by the predator. Na, chameleon, camouflage occurs. Wherever you place it, it will turn it's to that color. Okay, it will try to camouflage. Some are poisonous and therefore they are avoided by predators. The monarch butterfly is highly distasteful to its predator because of special chemical present in its body. Interestingly, the butterfly acquires this chemical during caterpillar stage by feeding on poisonous weed. So some preys are poisonous. Okay, so like if an eagle wants to eat a snake, if the snake is venomous, then it will be at the end of the day harmful to the eagle, right? So some are enormous, some are unpalatable. That is, they have a very bad taste. It is because of such as a monarch butterfly, it is highly distasteful. So this is because at caterpillar stage they feed on poisonous weed and they acquire it, and therefore they become poisonous in the later stage when they develop into a butterfly. For plants, herbivores are the predators. Nearly 25% of all insects are known as phytophagous, feeding on plant sap and other parts of plant. So, uh, 25% of all insects are known as phytophagous. Phytophagous is also very important. Phytophagous, that is, they feed on plants and plant sap. Okay. Problem is particularly severe for plants because unlike animals, they cannot run away from their predators, right? Plants therefore evolved astonishing variety of morphological and chemical defenses against herbivores, such as in acacia, acacia, cactus, we have thorns and spines, right? Which is the most common morphological defense. It is a morphological defense. Then many plants produce and store chemicals which make herbivores sick when they are eaten. They inhibit feeding or digestion and disrupt its reproduction, or sometimes they even kill it. There are poisonous plants also. You must have seen the calotropis growing in abandoned fields. Calotropis is a weed. The plant produces highly poisonous cardiac glycosides, which is why you never see a cattle or goat browsing near that plant. Okay, because they will die. Like it has poisonous cardiac glycosides. Wide variety of chemical substances which extract from plants on a commercial scale, such as nicotine, caffeine, quinines, strychnine, opium, are produced by them as defenses against grazers and browsers. So all these drugs, opium, strychnine, quinine, caffeine, nicotine, these are all actually defenses against grazers and browsers. Now comes competition. When Darwin spoke of the struggle for existence and survival of the fittest in nature, he was convinced that interspecific competition is a potent force in organic evolution. So, when Darwin was speaking for struggle for existence and survival of fittest, he thought that interspecific competition is a potent force for organic evolution. It is generally believed that competition occurs when closely related species um compete for same resources which are limiting, but that is not entirely true. We always say competition means if you and I are uh, you know sitting in the same class giving for the same exam, we both are of the same age, same class, everything is same school, then the competition is more. But that's not always true. It's not true that for the same resources, for the same species, species only competition is there. Totally unrelated species can also compete for the same resource. Okay, if it's not necessary that if you are giving the entrance exam NEET, then you are only competing with another guy of your class or your school who is giving the NEET. Also, you are going to compete worldwide with everyone. So all those people, different states, different places, different towns, different villages, all those people who are NEET aspirants, even people who are dropouts, all of them together, you all are going to write the same exam. So, for instance, in some shallow South American lakes, visiting flamingos and resident fishes compete for their common food, that is zooplankton. So in some American lakes, flamingos as well as the resident fishes of that particular lake, they both compete for the same food, that is zooplankton. Resources need not be limiting for competition. This is also a second thing. Okay, this is really important. These 2 points are very important. So, first point is that need not be same species. Okay, the example is flamingos and fishes. This is the first one. Second one is resources need not be limited always. Why? It also depends on the behavior. Sometimes, and when we were kids, we were so stupid. You must remember, um, like if both of us have, or maybe with your brothers and sisters also, you must have seen. No, he also has ice cream. He or a piece of cake. You also have an ice cream piece of cake. That person has his own paper, pencil, everything. Still, they will ask from you, they will take from you, they will try, even though they have their own, even though everything is, even though they can be happy with their own, live their own world, mind their own business, still they will come and bother you, the unnecessarily kach, 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 kach. Um, so here, resources need not be limiting for competition to occur. In interference competition, feeding efficiency of one species might be reduced due to interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species. So let's say we have four pizzas, two pizzas for me, two pizzas for my friend. Now, I am eating really slowly. My friend is eating too fast. Maybe he'll finish both of his pizzas and then he will try to eat one of my pizzas also. Who knows? Like, uh, so So basically, due to the interfering and inhibitory presence of the other species, whose feeding efficiency is more, even though food and space is abundant, still the resources will be, still competition will be there. So competition is best defined as a process in which fitness of one species measured in terms of the intrinsic rate of increase R is significantly lower in presence of the other species. Okay, so competition can be best described as when one species is, efficient, that is the intrinsic rate of increase R, that is fitness of one species, when is lower than the other species, then that is the other species is higher, R is higher, then we can say that in the presence of each other, then we can say that competition is occurring. It is relatively easy to demonstrate in laboratory experiments, as Gauss and other experimental ecologists did. When resources are limited, the competitively superior species will eventually eliminate the other species. But evidence for such competitive exclusion occurring in nature is not always conclusive. So, in laboratory, if we carry out the experiment of two different organisms, okay, we can see that superior species will eventually, like competition, slowly, gradually, the weaker species, inferior species, it will eliminate it completely, okay, from the competition. We have seen that, but we cannot hold it true in real world, in nature conclusively always. Strong and persuasive circumstantial evidence does exist, however, in some cases. For example, please underline, this is really important. Abingdon tortoise in Galapagos Island became extinct within a decade after goats were introduced on the island, apparently due to the greater browsing efficiency of the goats. Another evidence is the occurrence of competition in nature occurs from what is known as the competitive release. A species whose distribution is restricted to a small geographical area because of presence of competitively superior species is found to expand its distributional range dramatically when competing species is experimentally removed. Cornell's elegant field experiment showed on a rocky sea coast of Scotland larger and competitively superior barnacle, that is Balanus dominatus, the intertidal area, and excludes the smaller barnacles from that zone. In general, herbivorous plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivorous. So here, two examples are really important. First one is that um, when when the browsing efficiency or the feeding efficiency is greater, such as example Abingdon tortoise in Galapagos Island, it became extinct after a decade. Even though there were when even though there was ample of space and resources for that species, still the moment we introduced goats, then they got eliminated. Okay, but this is not really the case every time. Occurrence Another occurrence of competition is also, which is known as competitive release. What is competitive release? When a species has been previously eliminated, or you can say like, they have been exiled or removed from that particular area by a superior species. When the superior species dies or gets eliminated, then the inferior species, which was earlier removed from that particular area, will come back and repopulate and get established in its older area. Okay, because the competing species or the competitively superior species has been removed. So Cornell's elegant field experiment showed that on rocky sea coast of Scotland, the larger and competitively superior barnacle dominates the intertidal area and excludes the smaller barnacle Cathylamus from that zone. Balanus dominatus barnacle, it is superior than the barnacle Cathylamus. In general, herbivorous plants appear to be more adversely affected by competition than carnivores. Gauss's Gauss's competitive exclusion principle states that two closely related species competing for same resources cannot coexist indefinitely, and competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. Okay. Gauss's competitive exclusion principle said that two species cannot resources cannot coexist indefinitely, the inferior will be eliminated. This may be true if resources are limiting, but not otherwise. More recent studies which do not support such gross generalization about competition, while they do not rule out the occurrence of interspecific competition in nature, they point out that species facing competition might evolve mechanism to promote coexistence rather than exclusion. So Gauss's competitive exclusion principle said that if two species are competing for the same resources and the resources are limiting, then the superior species will continue, whereas the inferior species will gradually get extinct or eliminated. But this is not really true. Over the years, even though we are not denying interspecific competition, we are still saying that exclusion is not the only way. Coexistence can also happen. One such mechanism is known as resource partitioning. In resource partitioning, instead of competitive exclusion, coexistence takes place, in which two species compete for the same resource, but they avoid competition by choosing different times for feeding, different foraging patterns, different areas. Okay, different geographical location. For example, MacArthur showed that five closely related species of warblers living in the same tree were able to avoid competition and coexist due to behavioral differences in their foraging activities. So MacArthur showed that five closely related species of warblers, okay, um, birds, they lived in the same tree, but they chose different parts. Okay, in hummingbirds also, the I'll show you how, what they are trying to say, what is exactly resource partitioning. So if this is the tree, so this region is for one bird, this region is for one bird, this region is for one bird, this region is for one bird. Okay, like that. Now, parasitism. Parasitism, considering, so they all can coexist. There's no competition between them, even though same they need the same resources. Still, no competition. They do not enter into each other's area. You must have seen, hota hai na, like dogs. They have their own area, right? So like one dog will not enter there's a line which the other dog will not enter. Street dogs I'm talking about. I have seen it a lot. So the moment the other dog enters, they all dogs round up and start barking, and make sure that dog stays out of their domain, their area. Now, parasitism. Considering that the parasite mode of life ensures free lodging and meals, it is not surprising that parasitism has evolved in so many taxonomic groups from plants to higher vertebrates. Many parasites evolve to be host specific. They can parasite only single species of host in such a way that both host and parasite tend to co evolve. That is, if the host evolves. Special mechanism for rejecting or resisting the parasite. The parasite also evolves mechanism to counteract and neutralize them in order to be successful with the same host species. So also parasitism, like free host, free meal, everything, shelter, everything the parasite gets. So it has evolved naturally throughout the years. Okay, and it has also become host specific. That is, it can only be the host of that particular species. All right. The parasite has to evolve mechanism to counteract and neutralize them in order to be successful with the same host species. So basically, if the host evolves and develops special mechanism to reject, then the parasite will also develop special mechanism to neutralize them. Like, parasite evolve special adaptations such as loss of unnecessary sense organ, presence of adhesive organs such as suckers to cling to the host, loss of digestive system, and high reproductive capacity. So the host, it loses unnecessary sense organs. Sorry, the parasite. Once it's inside the host, it doesn't need unnecessary digestive system, this system, that system. So it loses all that sense organs and all, and it develops special high reproductive capacity and special adhesive organs or suckers to cling on to the host. The life cycle of parasite are often complex, involving one or two intermediate host or vectors to facilitate parasitization of its primary host. Human liver fluke or trematode parasite depends on two intermediate hosts, a snail and a fish, to complete its life cycle. Malarial parasite also needs female Anopheles mosquito to spread to other hosts. Majority of the parasite harm the host. They reduce the survival, growth, and reproduction of the host and reduce its population density. They might render the host more vulnerable to predation by making it physically weak. Do you believe that an ideal parasite should be able to thrive within the host without harming it? Then why didn't natural selection lead to evolution of such totally harmless parasites? Parasites that feed on the external, see, these are, you cannot, because see, parasite, um, then it won't be a parasite, then it will become beneficial. Okay, it will go in a different direction, because parasites, they only need their own, then it will become, if the parasite is not harming us, then it will become kind of like commensalism, like it is getting food, shelter and all, it is, but it is not bothering us. So parasitism. And then why natural selection? Because they need food and everything, and they get it from us, so we are naturally going to be affected. Okay, parasites which feed on external surface of the host organism are called as ectoparasites. We already know this, such as lice on humans and ticks on dogs. Okay, many marine fish which are infested with ectoparasite copepods. Cuscuta parasitic plant commonly found on hedge plant has lost its chlorophyll and leaves in the course of evolution. It derives nutrition from the host plant from which it parasites. Female mosquito is not considered a parasite, although it needs our blood for reproduction. Because the female mosquito, why it is not considered as a parasite? Because all female mosquitoes do not drink blood. This is a misconception. Only the female mosquitoes which are pregnant drink blood of humans, and male mosquitoes don't drink blood at all. So all the other non-pregnant female mosquitoes as well as the male mosquitoes, both of them depend on plant sap. Only the pregnant female mosquitoes, for her growing children and embryos, she needs to feed on blood. In contrast, endoparasites are those which live inside the host body at different sites: liver, kidney, lungs, red blood cells, etc. Life cycle of endoparasite is more complex because of the extreme specialization. Their morphological and anatomical features are greatly simplified while emphasizing their reproductive potential. Parasitism. What is brood parasitism? Brood parasitism, you know the bird quail, right? Quail bird. She she uh, she always comes and lays her egg on some other bird's nest, and her child is raised by the other bird. So brood parasitism is a fascinating example of parasites in which a parasitic bird lays its eggs in the nest of a host and lets the host incubate them. During the course of evolution, the eggs of the parasitic bird have evolved to resemble the host's egg in size and color to reduce the chance of the host bird detecting the foreign egg and ejecting them from the nest. Try to follow the movements of cuckoo or the quail bird and the crow. Okay, in the park in breeding season, and watch parasitism. You can actually see, the quail bird or the cuckoo. She lays her eggs in the crow's nest, and over time, her eggs have also evolved in resembling those eggs of crow, so that the crow mother doesn't, reject and eject the uh, eggs of the cuckoo bird. All right. Now let's come to commensalism. Commensalism is interaction in which one species benefits and the other is neither harmed nor benefited. Okay. An orchid growing as an epiphyte on a mango branch and the barnacles growing on the back of the whale, while neither the mango tree nor the whale derive any apparent benefit. So the orchid always grows near the mango tree. Okay, at the end, so it gets shelter. It but at the same time, it's not actually in nutrients and all, but it's not actually taking the water and nutrient significant amount from the mango tree or the banyan tree, right? So the tree is not affected because orchid is really small. And similarly, barnacles growing in a whale, the whale is not affected. So the cattle egret grazing, cattle in close association. If you live, classic example of commensalism. So the cattle egret, it always grazes near the cattle, because the cattle, it has all kinds of like insects and all on the cattle, right? So around the cattle only you can, the egret gets all the insects to eat and all the food. So it always forages close to where the cattle are grazing, because as they move, they stir up and flush out insects from vegetation, which otherwise may be difficult for the egret to catch. Another example is between sea anemone and stinging tentacles and the clownfish which lives among them. The fish gets protection for predators which stay away from stinging tentacles. The anemone does not appear to derive any benefit hosting the clownfish. So we saw so many examples of commensalism, wherein one was getting benefited, the other was neutral. The first one that we saw was orchid growing at the base of the like mango tree. Then the second one that we saw was barnacles on top of a whale. Third one we saw was egret, which was near the cattle, it was grazing. The last one we saw the sea anemone and the clownfish. So the clownfish was hiding in the behind tentacles of the sea anemone, so as to save itself from the predator, but it wasn't getting affected. Okay, sea anemone was not benefited or anything. Now mutualism in which both are getting both are interacting and both are getting benefited, such as the most common one all of us have been studying from lower classes is symbiotic relationship between that is lichen, so, which is a symbiotic relationship between fungus and algae, that is or cyanobacteria. So similarly, mycorrhiza with the roots of higher plants, it again, which is a fungi, and the roots of higher plants, again it forms a symbiotic relationship. The fungi helps the plant in absorption of essential nutrients and soil, while the plant provides fungi with energy yielding carbohydrates. This is important. This line: the fungi help the plant in absorption of essential nutrients from the soil, whereas the plant provides the fungi with energy yielding carbohydrates. Most spectacular and evolutionary fascinating example of mutualism is found in plant animal relationship. Plants need the help of animals for pollinating their flowers and dispersing their seeds. Animals have to be paid fees for the such services. Plants offer rewards or fees. We learned this in sexual reproduction in plants, in the form of pollen and nectar for pollinators, and juicy and nutritious foods also for seed dispersers. But mutually beneficial systems should also be safeguarded against cheaters. For example, animals try to steal nectar without aiding in pollination. Now you can see why plant animal interactions often involve co-evolution of the mutualist. Why do they involve co-evolution? Because like both should get benefited. Otherwise, if only nectar the animal takes but does not pollinate, then it's cheating with the plant. That's a funny name. Now evolution of a flower and its pollinator are tightly linked with one another. In many species of fig trees, there is tight one-to-one relationship with the pollinator species of wasp. It means that the given fig species can be pollinated only by its partner wasp species and no other species. The female wasp uses the fruit not only as an position egg-laying site, but uses the developing seeds within the fruit for nourishing its larva. So fig species, okay, so fig and wasp, okay, fig and wasp, that is wasp pollinates the fig species and no other species, okay, only these two. Very intimate close relationship, mutualism is there. So the female wasp uses the fruit not only as an egg laying site but also to develop the um, but uses developing seeds to nourish its larva, okay. So the wasp uses the site to lay her eggs as well as nourish through the seeds of the fruit, okay. The wasp pollinates fig while searching for suitable egg laying sites. In return for the favor of pollination, fig offers some of its developing seeds as food for developing the wasp larvae. Orchids show a bewildering diversity of floral patterns, many of which have evolved to attract right pollinator insects, bees, and bumblebees to ensure guaranteed pollination. Not all orchids offer rewards. Mediterranean orchid, that is orphis, employs sexual deceit to get pollination done by species of bees. One petal of its flower bears an uncanny resemblance to the female of the bee in size, color, and marking. The male bee is attracted to what it perceives as a male. This is known as pseudo-copulates with the flower, and during that process it gets dusted with pollen from the flower. When this bee pseudo copulates with the flower, it transfers the pollen to it and thus pollinates the flower. Here you can see how co-evolution cooperates. If the female bee's color patterns change uh, even slightly for any during reason for during evolution, pollination success will be reduced unless the orchid flower co-evolves to maintain the resemblance of its petal to its female bee. So this is a really interesting mechanism in mutualism. In the Not all orchids give floral rewards. Okay, the Mediterranean orchid, that is Ophrys, employs a sexual deceit to get pollination. That is in the Mediterranean orchid. The Mediterranean orchid's color, okay, is same as the bee, female bee. So pseudo copulation occurs. Pseudo copulation occurs wherein the bee copulates with the flower and in turn gets dusted by the pollen grain. And then when the same bee it pseudo copulates with another flower, then the pollen grain gets transferred to the other flower, and therefore the that flower gets pollinated. Okay, so and further, if evolution occurs and the color of the bee changes even slightly, then the orchid will also Mediterranean orchid will also need to change its color so that both can evolve continuously. Otherwise, there will be a reduce in the uh, uh, in pollination. Okay, because uh, because of evolution in only one species of bee. Okay, that is both the plant as well as the animal or the organism need to together evolve. Now, amensalism is not written in NCERT textbook, but as per NEET, I can tell you, amensalism is basically when one organism is benefited negatively, okay, whereas the other one is neutral. So you just remember example streptococcus bacteria and penicillin. Okay, so when it was discovered at first also, so the bacteria gets affected negatively, but the penicillin is not purposely harming bacteria. Okay, so what happened is when it was discovered, there were patches of bacteria growing, and then suddenly in a place where the penicillin was there, bacteria was not there. Okay, like that's how it was discovered, like the penicillin was not letting the bacteria grow. So then the penicillin is not doing it knowingly. Similarly, with apple seed also, like the it has what it is poisonous to another way, but it's not it's not knowingly harming. Okay, when I say predation or parasitism, when I say, it's the the other one is getting benefited. Okay, the parasite or the predator, they get benefited, and they are intentionally harming the prey or the host. Whereas over here, even though streptococcus bacteria is being harmed, it is not in any way benefiting the penicillium the penicillium, okay, fungi. It is just that is growing on its own, and it is not letting streptococcus bacteria grow. So this is known as an example of amensalism. So with this, we finish with organism and population. The 2 hour video, I know it's really long, so total in 3 hours we finished. The next I will be uploading would be biodiversity. Okay, I'll try to finish it in one class, or at least in lesser time than this. It took 3 hours for organism and population, but we are done, okay, with this. Thank you so much for listening. And solve the NCERT questions, and extra questions and answers and all we'll do after finishing the portion. Now I'm just like doing chapter after chapter uploading. So next, I think biology, I'll take biodiversity and human health and disease. Again, human health and disease is a very big chapter. I'll also start with physics. Okay, I'm thinking of starting with physics, ray optics, wave optics, semiconductors. Let's see, dual nature. So thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.